of Virginia, 1680 to 1775, which is a facsimile of the minutes that the Colonial Council kept when the capital was where? In Williamsburg, of all the interactions that they had with Native people. Okay. In 1705, the House of Burgesses, which is our House of Delegates now, right, granted us 41,000 acres of reservation land, which already belonged to us. They called it a circle tract, which was 18,000, and a square tract, which was 23,000. In reality, it was an octagon. It wasn't a circle, not square. It was an octagon, okay? In 1735, the Commonwealth of Virginia relieved the two tribal interpreters of my people, Henry Briggs and Thomas Wynn, and the 41,000 acres of reservation land began to be sold off. Okay? Until the last piece disappeared in 1877. So, when Spotswood came to have a reservation in 1711, he said, if you were to send your chiefman's son to the Brafferton, which was a school set aside on the campus of William Mary College, the first school, to teach Native Americans, First Americans, English, Christianity, that he would forgive the tribute of the 20 beaver pelts. However, on February 27, 1713, we as a tribe let the last standalone treaty with the Crown of England. It was signed off with Okura Ashby here, a.k.a. William Edmund, and Provisional Lieutenant Governor Alexander Spotswood. The treaty says that now we give 3 hours as our tribute. So every year during St. George's Day, which is April 15th, we meet with the governor, the governor's representative, and we present 3 hours wrapped in a beaver pelt with a wampum belt, okay? Because it also says that you can include anything else relevant to your treaty. In 1715, Provisional Lieutenant Governor Alexander Spotswood decided to do the same thing we did to the Japanese in World War II. Colonize them, okay? So he tried to bring all the tributary Native Americans to a place called Fort Christiana. Every tribe that had signed a treaty, a peace treaty with Virginia, he was trying to put them there. What had happened was the Tuscarora War in Como, North Carolina had broke out. Now, Edward Bland had already wrote in 1650 when he came to a place called Homeville where Highway 40 and 30 intersect, when he was looking for the Tuscarora Indian, he said that they were a rich, brown-skinned Indian that were bearded, okay? That's what he said, mahogany in color. Again, 1728, pay close attention to this, okay? 1728, William Byrd came to our reservation, April 7, April 8. And he described how our fort looked, Palisade Fort, which we call Cheroenhaka Town, which is an actual name of a Cheroenhaka, Nottoway Indian village. And he said when he approached the village, that the young women gave out hoops and hollers. And all the young men ran in the woods. Then he said the young men came out and they were dancing to the sound of a gore drum, stretched tight with an animal skin, sang it in their native tongue and keeping step with the drum. First recorded powwow anywhere in Virginia. I didn't write it. William Byrd wrote it. William Byrd wrote it, okay? William Byrd II of Westover. You can read his papers. So he also said that the young women came out second and their hair was braided and hung in locks on their shoulders. They were tall and shapely. We say that anything that the English saw back in the 1700s over 5'5" was tall, okay? Then he said they were seldom but handsome. We would agree with that. We would disagree with that. We have some good-looking women in our tribe, okay? Even though our tribe appears to be a rainbow coalition, but every person in our tribe, 425, can show you an authentic genealogy search paper trail going back to an ethnohistoric Cheroenhaka Nottoway Indian surname. Whether it be a census or whether it be the 122 deeds with the native people's names on them when the land was being sold off. So he said that the young women had a match coat, we call that a shawl today, wrapped about their upper torso, that their mahogany skin shone through. He said, though they be sad but colored, they would make exceptional wives for the English planters, and that their dark skin would bleed out in 2 generations. Many First Americans were rich, brown-skinned people, darker than I am, okay? So you need to understand that. So if you see someone, you say, well, that person can't have any native blood in them. You could be totally wrong. And I guarantee you, I'm looking at you now, and I guarantee you some of you here have native blood. Yatahe. Anybody from Navajo country here? Yatahe? No? But I guarantee you, somewhere along the line, your grandfather, grandmother, your aunt, your uncle said, but yeah, we got some Indian blood in us. Be honest. Raise your hand if you've ever been told that. Look at the hands going up. Of course. Of course. Because that's what happened. There was a lot of interaction between native people, colonials, to include some people that were of African ancestry. So you have to understand that. But however, if you can show that paper trail, we don't do blood quantum anymore. Blood quantum was, excuse my French, was a colonial name, okay? To actually weed out the native people. Like the one drop blood thing, that Walter Plecker, who was one of the most damaging persons that ever did anything to destroy Native American history, culture, and their genealogy, Dr. Walter Plecker, who was the first director of the Bureau of Vital Statistics from 1912 to 1946. He was part of the eugenics movement. He was trying to create one race of people, Caucasian and everything else. It didn't matter whether you were African descent, whether you were Native American or First American, whether you were Puerto Rican, whether you were Mexican. You were put in a mixing bowl and you were called what? Colored. Every tribe in Virginia was considered as colored on the census in the 1900s. So you have to understand that. You have to understand the history, okay? Because people write history to the color of their own persuasiveness. That's why people have problems when they're doing genealogy. They say, well, my grandfather, I know, was Native American, but when I do his census, and at one point it says Indian, and then 20 years later it says black, or it says mulatto. Mulatto does not necessarily mean half white, half black. It could be half white, half Indian, half black, half Indian, or purebred. That was a term that the Racial Integrity Act brought about for Native people to trying to read out Native Americans. You have to understand that. So Byrd wrote in his diary. You need to read that, okay? It's exceptional reading. You read it in his diary, and it'll show you about the his visit to our village in Cheroenhaka. We had mentioned earlier, and the narrator talked about it, and Dr. Parker talked about it, also in reference to all the wars that Native people have been involved in. But little of you know that during the French and Indian War, Thomas Jefferson recruited George Washington recruited Cheroenhaka and Nottoway Indian warriors and went to fight the French during the French and Indian War in a place called Fort Dominguez. We were there. Okay? In fact, some of us stayed in Michigan area, and we got a sort of recognized tribe called Nottoway, which is a derivative of the name Nottoway. Speaking of Nottoway, Nottoway is a derogatory name given to my people by the Algonquin speakers of the Powhatan Confederation. It means snake. It means adder. It means stealthy. It means warrior, okay? The real name of the Nottoway Indians is Cheroenhaka. Can you say Cheroenhaka? Cheroenhaka. You're not going to make me dance again. Cheroenhaka?
Cheroenhaka.
It means people at the fork of the stream, where the Blackwater River come together and where the Nottoway River, or Nos Chioki in our language, in that fork to form the Cheroen River. In that fork there were three villages, Tonatara, Warante, and Cheroenhaka, okay? So, we were there with George Washington. Well, how do you know? Because I have all George Washington's papers and I read them. And when the 5 Cheroenhaka Nottoway soldiers were mustered out, they were given a purple suit of clothes. Why purple? Because in those days we were still under the English, right? There was the crown color, purple. So that's why I wear this purple sash. Okay? I mentioned about the 41,000 acres of reservation land granted by the House of Burgess in 1705, which began to be sold off in 1735, and the relief of the tribe interpreters Thomas Wynne and Henry Briggs were dismissed. Because the colonials said that we could understand, speak good enough English to understand a legal deed. Then they took a breath and said, well, they can't read and they can't write. So all the land disappeared. And I share this throughout my presentations with colleges, universities, or whatever. The first deed that was let, it said that you're not supposed to sell more than 400 acres a day. It did 4,000. The first deed that was let, and I have a copy of all 122 for the 41,000 acres of reservation land. All the marks of the chiefs were on that deed. The rest of the deeds, the scribes wrote those deeds and they made the marks because the marks were different. A chief man's signature never changed. Your signature don't change unless you get real old or something and it gets to be scribbled, right? So it doesn't change. So it kind of gives you an idea how the land disappeared from native people, okay? We're the only tribe in Virginia, I mentioned it earlier, I'm going to close out in a few minutes, okay? We're the only tribe in Virginia that a gubernatorial mandated census was required of my people where actual colonial names were given to my people. What happened was that Edith Turner, a.k.a. Wane Rumtara, that was her first American name, the whites gave her the name Edith Turner, colonial name. She took a friendship with one of the trustees. The trustees manage all the land, okay, white trustees. And she requested that all of the children be brought back on the reservation because they were being housed in the colonial houses and they were being worked as servants. And the colonies were receiving money. We call it Spotswood's Welfare Act. They were receiving money for the kids. So she requested that all the kids be brought back on the reservation so they could learn their culture and their traditions. So the governor wrote and said, we need an accountability for all the money that's coming into the reservation. The trustees wrote back and said, well, Cheroenhaka and Nottoway Indians come in every month, they get blankets, they get meat, and they get a whole lot of rum. They're just rum heads. They don't keep receipts. So the governor said, but give me a special census. Census done 1790 every 10 years, right? 1790, 1800, 1810, 1820. So 1808 was the special census. These are the names that were given. They only counted 17 people. And Thomas Jefferson in 1820 rebutted that. What was going on was that they would try to have the less number of native people so they could get the land. Okay? There's Edith Turner, my fifth foster great-grandmother, Wane Rumtara, okay? There's Nancy Turner. There's Polly Woodson, my fourth great-grandmother, okay, who married Pearson Turner. However, Thomas Jefferson, that's 17, right? It's like we don't have kids. Thomas Jefferson came back in 1820, and he said that there were like 40 people living on the reservation still. All the people that moved off the reservation because the land was being sold. Some of the people went into a place 2.5 miles in the back of the woods called Orangetown, okay, where they raised hogs, where they grew crops, where they tanned hides, they fish, etc. We're the only tribe in Virginia whose language was recorded. The Algonquin speakers, they're making their language, okay? Our language was recorded by a former professor of mathematics by the name of John Wood out of William Mary. He sat down with my fifth foster great-grandmother, Edith Turner, and he recorded the vocabulary. I'm going to share one word with you. He asked her the word for God, the great supreme. She said Hunte. But when he recorded it, he put Quaker in front of it. See, the Cheroenhaka and Nottoway Indian tribe have always known from the beginning of time that there's one creator and there's one evil person, which we refer to as Satan or the devil. We say Oki in our language. We say Hunte for the creator of God. But she put Quaker in front of that word, and that's how John Wood recorded it. But why did she put Quaker in front of it? Because it was the Quakers that were promulgating Christianity during that time. She wanted him to know that, yes, we know the one true God, okay? So anyway, the language was sent to Peter de Pontier in Philadelphia by Thomas Jefferson. We have all the copies of the letters. And Jefferson said, I've come across this ancient Powhatan language. And he sent it to Peter de Pontier. Were it not for Peter de Pontier, the Algonquins would have our language instead as theirs. Peter de Pontier sent 3 letters to Thomas Jefferson, said, no, they are not. This is not an Algonquin dialect. This is not a Lenape dialect. It is an Iroquois dialect, and it's a mixed dialect of the 6 nations. The Mohawk, the Seneca, the Cayuga, the Onondaga, the Oneida, the Tuscarora, etc. Okay? So were it not for that, now we do a word a week to all of our tribal people and kids. Matter of fact, raise your hand, Vasta is my tribal women's group, and she and the tribal secretary sends out the word a week, because we say, if you lose your language, you lose your culture. If you lose your culture, you lose your traditions. So we're trying to keep our language alive, okay? So we're very fortunate, and there it is again. Thomas Jefferson quoted in a newspaper in 1820 that of all the indigenous tribes in Virginia, there were only 3 remaining. I didn't write it, Thomas Jefferson wrote it. He said, Pamunkey, Cheroenhaka, Nottoway, and a few Metapanaka. William Byrd said in 1728, April the 7th, April the 8th, when he came to our reservation in Cortland, he said we were the only tribe remaining in Virginia. Well, we know that's not true, because we have 11 state-recognized tribes, of which we have 7 federal recognized tribes in Virginia now. So when people write, they write to the color of their own persuasiveness. So you have to make sure that you read and try to back up sources. But Thomas Jefferson said, and surely Thomas Jefferson was an honorable man, Thomas Jefferson said there were only 3 tribes remaining in Virginia. But we're here. We always have been here. I know we're here because I'm standing here. 1875, the last 575 acres were sold. The last portion disappeared from the Sykes family in 1952 from a tribal member's hand. Hand sites. I mentioned that earlier about excavation was done in 1965, 66, and 69, where 131 skeletal remains of our ancestors were dug up. Here they are here. You can see them in shoe boxes.